Next, we honor African American History Month with a visit to the National Civil Rights Museum over in Memphis. Linn Sitler toured the hallowed halls recently to explore new exhibits that are both educational and inspirational.
The Lorraine Motel. During the era of Jim Crow, it served as a place where African Americans could rent a room to stay the night. It was supposed to be a safe haven, even in the South, but it was no safe haven for the world's greatest civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. On April 4th, 1968, an assassin's bullet abruptly ended his life as he stood on the motel's balcony. Constructed around the Lorraine Motel, the National Civil Rights Museum, opened in 1991, documents Dr. King's life and teachings. However, today's museum is not the one of decades past.
So it was a phenomenal museum before the renovation in 2014. But the intent with the renovation was to put more technology in there. We talked to our guests and said, so what would make this even more impactful, more powerful, more of a transformational experience? And they talked about being able to get close with the exhibits, to be able to touch. And so we took that information and really created a new museum.
Faith Morris, Chief Marketing and External Affairs Officer of the National Civil Rights Museum, recommends that you tour the museum like it's laid out in historic, chronological fashion.
It's a linear experience. You go through a journey through history. And Dr. King doesn't start this journey. Actually, we talk about slavery, Jim Crow. We talk about all of what happened during that time. So you find that there's a story in each of the galleries that tells you a really important part of what was going on during that time in history. You go from there to Brown versus Board of Education, and we show you that. And what you'll notice in many of the galleries, there's always statistics, because we think the more facts you know about what was happening during that time, it helps you understand the environment then. What was going on? What were people fighting against? So that journey really takes you on through the museum. Dr. King, you see him for the first time when you get to the Montgomery exhibit, where you see Rosa Parks. But intentionally, we tell you more than Rosa Parks' story. This is not any one story. It's that understanding, it's that humanity, it's that empathy that we talk about. Understand that we all are humans and we contribute to this nation in a way that just doesn't work the same anywhere else. There's this huge wall of film, and it's called World in Transition. And it shows all the movements around the world that were inspired by the civil rights movement. It was the gay movement. It was the seniors movement. It was what was going on in Japan and China and Mexico, Chicago. It showed that this whole world is impacted by the same things that we're impacted with. Folks are just trying to fight for freedom. So we try to tell those stories. We have a lot in common. So there are beautiful messages about that, and we try to bring that out.
The museum's true-to-life statues, gigantic photo murals, and interactive exhibits bring to life the history of the civil rights movement, from slavery through the modern-day oppression of various people everywhere.
But we are relentless in making sure that folks understand that unless we do better, and we hopefully inspire people because of what has happened in history and what is happening now, to take a stand.
The museum's journey propels you back in time through Montgomery, to the bus boycotts, to the horrific bombings in Birmingham, to the age of lunch counter sit-ins and freedom riders.
I was here walking through one day, and there was a grandfather and his son. And he asked his grandfather, he said, "Did you know about all of this?" And he said, "Well, some of it I did." And the little boy, he was about 9, he said, "Well, what did you do?" And the look on his grandfather's face, you know, it just tugged at you. And that little boy was serious because he just did not understand why things like this happen and we stand by and do nothing. So he made a huge impression on his grandfather. He made a huge impression on me. So we really stand on trying to understand the facts, what is happening in this world, what's happening in your community, what's happening in your family, and see what we can do better.